All right. Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789 to stream us at realresistanceradio.com. Certainly would love you to join in the conversation today. Before we get started, I want to thank all of you who, from the depths of your heart, reached out to me and my family and offered prayers for the loss of my brother. You know, I'm from a large family. I'm from a family of 13. And this is the third of my brothers that we have lost. And certainly was a shock because he was 69 years of age and had not had a history of illness or any of those things. And so when I got the news the other day, I was pretty much surprised because he was not ill. But what I will say is that life is not promised. And so that's why I always say, you must live every day like it's your last, because you never know when the evil consequences of time will call any of us. One thing's for certain, all of us are going to be called. Whether we are ready or not, we're going to be called. But I do appreciate, don't think I don't, the thoughtful responses by all of you. And, you know, I just said, well, you know, I need to be on the air. And so I am. And I'm thankful again that you took the time out. As I have always said, the real essence of the person is not in the flesh. The flesh comes and goes. The flesh is fleeting. And we are not, you know, the flesh is not real. You may say, well, what are you talking about? Well, you know, the flesh is here today and gone tomorrow. If I am just so enamored with the flesh, with people in the flesh, then many people who I've known and loved ones have gone on. And if my inclination is to be in love with the physicalness of a person, and that person all of a sudden is taken away, if I fail to understand that the importance of all of it is through the Spirit. The Spirit is eternal. And so my brother, who is now gone, and he joins two of my other brothers along with my mom and all of the people who I've loved, who have gone on in my 64 years of living. If I didn't know where they are and how to reach them, that's through your heart and through your mind. For the real essence of a person is in your mind, in your heart. And you can always recall the beauty of them through those vessels. So thank all of you for taking the time out and reaching out to my family and I at this point in time. But I wanted to come today. What's going on, my man, Keith?
Surviving, man. The snow is great out there, but it's also deadly.
What's great about it?
The fact that it is fluffy and beautiful to look at, and it actually does kind of blanket everything over, so that's not so bitter.
Well, but the couple things with that.
And it holds water, and then it melts, and then it becomes spring grass.
Yeah, well, a couple things with that. It's, you know, it's only beautiful for the amount of time when it comes down and it hasn't been moved and people trampled on it, and then it gets very ugly. But the pristineness of it when it first happens, you're right, it's absolutely beautiful when it's on the wires, when it's on the limbs of the trees.
Yeah.
It's very scenic. But as far as today, I've been in there bragging on my snowblower, right? I bought a snowblower. I didn't use it last year, and I said, okay, I had it going last night, yesterday. I'm all prepared. I know I got it. I got this. All this snow, I'm ready. I get up, I get outside, I get it started, boom, stopped. So I get it started again. Boom, it stopped. And so I get the old trusty shovel out.
Uh-huh.
And that's a lot of snow for shoveling.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though it is light. And I had to rely on the old elbow grease.
Careful for those repetitive motion injuries.
Yeah, man, but, it's a good thing I went to the gym yesterday. And I will say this to people. Take it easy. There is a lot of snow. There is a lot of snow. It is heavy. And if you've been around the block a few times like I have, you should really be careful. But I want to welcome, I've got two guests today. Dr. Cecil Austin is going to join us, but I'm also joined by Mr. Paul Mozena. And we are going to talk about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King from a different perspective. Many of you have heard ad nauseum, Dr. King and I Have a Dream. And no question, great speech. The Dr. King I Have a Dream speech will go down in annals as one of the greatest speeches ever delivered. But that's not Dr. King. That speech was Dr. King at a different time. Imagine this. And oh, by the way, good morning. Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
Good afternoon, Earl. Thank you for having me today. But
Yeah,
finish your thoughts.
Yeah, man. No. I'm honored to have you in the studio. Tell us a little bit about Paul Mozena.
Well, I'm 62, retired from a 24-year career at Northwestern Mutual in 2012, and spent about 17 years cutting buckthorn in the Kettle Moraine as a volunteer. And Earl, you said that was a little eccentric, did you say? Or?
Yeah, what's buckthorn?
Well, it's an invasive species. It's an invasive tree. And I've been an activist for my whole adult life, but I became so frustrated when George W. became elected. And 9/11 came, and I was a 9/11. I still am a 9/11 truther. That was a lie. But I became so frustrated that I had to escape, basically. And I went out to the Kettle Moraine with my chainsaw, and I cut buckthorn every time I could get a chance. And I cleared beautiful oak groves, and we could talk about that quite a bit. But my heart has always been as seeking the truth. And you talked about the spirit of Martin Luther King, the spirit of the human being.
Right.
For some reason, his spirit has reached me. And the spirit that he lived was calling attention to the military-industrial complex. He said the United States was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. That was what he was saying at the time that they took him down. And we look around and we ask ourselves, what has changed since he spoke that truth? We've got the United States military more aggressive than ever. We've got one military invasion after another. Subverting democracies all over the world. We sell the most arms anywhere. And this isn't news to any of your listeners, but this is what King was fighting against. And if we look back at the times that led up to his murder, 1967, there was riots in over 100 cities. The place was going to burn down. Go ahead, sir.
107 cities burned. But go ahead.
Well, no, and please do jump in because I want to make sure that I get my facts straight. But this was a time of radical change, and Martin Luther King was a leader of unprecedented prestige, and I don't know if that's the right word, but he was. We haven't had a leader like Martin Luther King since then.
So let me say this to you and to the listening audience. I was 14 years old when Dr. King was assassinated. I was a very young man as we watched Dr. King on television. We were around at a time when television was starting to come into prominence. And so I got to see the essence of who he was, especially at that time. And what I want people to understand is that we can talk about Dr. King of 1964 and Dr. King of 1965 and all of those different things, but Dr. King was evolving. And so people don't talk about the evolution of Dr. King. He died at 39. His life was taken at 39, and 39 years old is very young age. And I always say where I was mentally at 39 is light years away from where I am at 64. And so to imagine what Dr. King would have been had he been allowed to live is what I always think about. And where would the world have been? The impact of Dr. King and the direction of his leadership and towards those latter years, challenging the nation to live up to the creed, to live up to the documents, the Declaration of Independence, and all of those things. It's where Dr. King was headed. Dr. King, in my humble opinion, was assassinated because how dare he, as long as he was integrating lunch counters and buses and bathrooms, that was okay, and the society could accept that. But when Dr. King started talking about the United States involvement across the globe, the military involvement of this nation, the war in Vietnam was the time that Dr. King signed his death warrant, because America could accept him again in trying to integrate lunch counters, but how dare he get involved in America's foreign policy. We're going to talk about all of those things today. You have several books that you've been talking about why Dr. King was assassinated, how he got assassinated. We're going to engage in all of those things. We're going to bring our good friend, Dr. Cecil Austin, in to join the conversation. Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789. Stream us at realresistanceradio.com. I'm glad to be back. And thank you all again for all the kind words. We've got to go to a break. You're listening to the Earl Ingram Show on realresistanceradio.com. Join in the conversation. As always, we'll be back.
Everybody thinks we can make home. Oh, but who are they?
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789, or stream us at realresistanceradio.com. Good afternoon, Dr. Austin. How you doing, my friend?
My pleasure to be here with you again, Earl.
Yeah.
Happy New Year and all of that.
Yeah, it's always good to
You're
have you.
still doing it. You're still bringing the community the information they need to know. Man, we appreciate you.
You know, Doc, it's always good to have you around. Let's talk a little bit, Dr. Austin, about your recollection of the first time you heard of Dr. Martin Luther King and the impact he had on your life.
Well, you know, I was involved in the civil rights struggle here, you know, with the priest.
Right.
Okay.
Father Grappy.
Father Grappy, yeah. And it was at that time, you know, we were really struggling and probably the pinnacle, you know, of the struggle that we can't continue like this. This country, which is supposed to be based on God and Christianity and all of that stuff in the Constitution, how can they do what they're doing, you know? And it was pretty easy for Dr. King to find an argument to put forth.
Right.
I mean, he didn't have to search real hard to find out, hey, man, we got to fix this, you know? And what a blessing to have him be willing to put his life on the line, because that's what he did. You know, he put his life on the line until he got to the mountaintop.
So Dr. King came to Milwaukee during this struggle, and many don't know.
Yes.
And really had some impact on the march that was going on here.
For sure.
Were you
For sure.
active
I was
at that
there.
point?
I got a chance to meet him.
Let's talk about that.
Oh, man, just to be
And
in
how old
the
were you
same
at that
room
time?
with them.
How old were you at that time?
Man, I was, what year would that have been? I don't know. I came out of high school in 63, and most of what I was involved in was while I was in college at Whitewater. Okay, the middle 60s.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And wow, what a pleasure. I had a opportunity to meet him, shake his hand, and he was big then because he knew what to say. He knew how to put things into language that people couldn't deny the reality of what he was saying. Such a powerful orator.
One of the reasons, Paul and Doc, that every time Dr. King's birthday would have turned 90 this time around. And, people have these sessions or, gatherings to talk about Dr. King and what Dr. King, did and all of those things. And so through music and dance and poetry and everybody gets together and, they honor Dr. King in the way that they think is the way to honor him, that I disagree with, by the way, but because I don't believe you can honor Dr. King with anything other than work. And not just for one day. I always talk about people treat Dr. King like they do their Christmas ornaments and their Christmas tree. Once a year, they bring the Christmas tree out and Christmas ornaments and lights, dust everything off from the closet, set up the Christmas tree for several days. Mm-hmm. And then when Christmas is over, they put it all back and put it in the closet. Well, they do that with Dr. King's memory too. And I always take umbrage to that. So once a year, we all of a sudden feel like we want to honor Dr. King. Mm-hmm. That's unacceptable.
That's our style, though.
I know.
That's our style.
What, American
we
style?
give people a day, But I think with Dr. King, you can't help but remember his words, and the concepts that he was trying to get across. He was able to explain the racial condition in the United States without really being angry. Okay, calling for violence.
Well, he changed.
He was working on the conscience.
Yeah, he challenged the morality.
He was working on the conscience.
He challenged the morality of the nation. Paul, you say what, man? Because Dr. King is really someone that you have really kind of sunk your teeth into. Why?
Well, Earl, thanks for asking. The issue at heart of this is the truth. And we have to ask ourselves, does the truth matter? And do people even know anymore how to distinguish the truth? Mm-hmm. Do people know how to look at the facts and sort out the logic, sort out look at what's going on? And if there's any legacy that Dr. King, if there is going to be a legacy, it needs to be, he spoke the truth to power. And they killed him. They killed him because he spoke the truth to power. And he had his hands on the reins of power and was willing to take it. And they said, no, brother, you're going down. And if we don't speak the truth about how this man died, that's an insult to Dr. King. So I recently read the book, The Plot to Kill King.
Okay, so
we'll get to it.
Yeah, we've got to go to a break.
When
we come back, we'll continue the conversation. I'm joined in the studio by Paul Mazzina. And Dr. Cecil Austin. Our phone lines open at 844-967-2789. You too can join in the conversation. We're talking about Dr. Martin Luther King. We'll be back. You're listening to Real Resistance Radio. We'll be back.
But is it taught?
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789. Stream us at realresistanceradio.com. I'm joined in studio by Paul Mazzina and Dr. Cecil Austin, and we're talking about Dr. Martin Luther King. And I don't want to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King where I have a dream, or Dr. King loved everybody. And Dr. King, was nonviolent, and Dr. King, all those things that people who, at the time Dr. King was alive, don't forget, many people wanted to see him dead. They could not stomach him. Even some in the black church thought he was an agitator, did not want him around. He was upsetting things. They had things under control. And he would come in and cause consternation amongst the people, which would then, they thought, bring pressure on them. So they were opposed to him. Let's stop acting like everybody loved Dr. King, because I was old enough to know that wasn't the case. I'm going to go to the phone lines right away. And on the line, Minister William Muhammad of the Nation of Islam. How you doing, sir?
I'm well, by God's grace.
And thank you for the call. You say what?
Well, first of all, I want to give you the greetings and condolences on the loss of your brother, and may God be pleased with him and bring peace to you and your family.
Thank you.
You know, when we talk about Dr. King, I agree with what you're saying 1,000%. It is really a tragedy the way we have allowed Dr. King's legacy to be watered down, packaged, and then marketed to us, to our children, in a way that it keeps us blind to his evolution, that history could inform us. You know, Dr. King, in 67, 68, he said things like this: my dream has become a nightmare. He said things like this: I fear. He said this to Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte talked about this. He said, I fear that I am integrating my people into a burning house. He said, and this is a quote from Dr. King, he said that I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. And the white moderate is what you would call the liberal today, or the progressive whites. He said, I have almost reached the unregrettable conclusion that the Negro's greatest stumbling block in the strive for freedom is not the white citizen council or the Ku Klux Klanners, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to positive peace, which is the presence of justice. So Dr. King was constantly evolving because he was sincere. As you stated earlier, when he began to speak against the Vietnam War, because he saw the commitment to the community and to the poor and to the black community that he understood would require great investment in resources of the country. He saw those resources going to war. So he saw the correlation, and he made the correlation. So he began to speak out against the war. The other thing that he did is he began to change his language. So he was no longer calling black people Negroes. He began to say black. And he said, yes, I'm black and I'm proud. The other thing that he evolved beyond is not just civil rights, but he talked about how we were promised 40 acres and a mule. But we were denied that. And at the same time, we were denied the land that we were promised. White peasants from Europe were coming over to the United States, and the government was giving them land, seed, and technology, and teaching them how to go for themselves. When we who had fought, bled, died, and enslaved and built this country, we were owed that, and they refused to do it. So you had him evolving at such a rapid pace that he was making his own colleagues in the civil rights movement very uncomfortable. And when the FBI would attack him, J. Edgar Hoover called him a notorious liar. He was labeled a communist. See, then the black preachers, as you said, they stepped away from him. The civil rights leaders stepped away from him. And Dr. King was extremely isolated. He suffered from depression, and he was betrayed by his own people because he followed his own conscience due to his own evolution and his own acknowledgement and recognition that white people were being hypocritical in their claim to help black people in the fight for justice.
You know, Minister William, we really appreciate you in adding some balance and clarity to what is really the truth. You cannot separate, although they do, Dr. King in the last years of his life than the Dr. King of the earlier years where he was so accepted. And unfortunately, that part of Dr. King, the message you just gave, very few people are aware of that. They don't teach that. You have to go outside of the comfort zone to know that Dr. King was going through that evolution.
Well, I'm going to allow others to call in, but I just wanted to invite people to come out to the mosque tomorrow because my subject is dealing with the evolution of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And what we have to remember is that Dr. King was assassinated, and he was assassinated by the government of the United States in combination with the local police department in Memphis there. And so it's not that he just died or was assassinated by some lone person. He was killed. And to give him a holiday is the most hypocritical, deceitful gesture that you can make. To kill him first.
You know, Minister,
him down, and then give him a holiday.
Minister William, thank you very much for the call.
What time is the program tomorrow?
Yeah, and the address of the mosque.
4202 North Tetonia Avenue, 10 a.m. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So let me say this first, Paul and Dr. Austin. When I was on a different radio station, I interviewed James Earl Ray's brother. Yeah, I did. I interviewed James Earl Ray's brother. Mm-hmm. He was saying that his brother had nothing to do with the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, and he was adamant about all of the things. I remember now. I had certainly forgotten. It's something I wouldn't have thought about, but I got to thinking back, and I went to see if I could find it in the archives of my shows, and I know I do have it somewhere, and I was trying to find it. But I remember we had at least an hour and a half conversation where he was saying and talking about exactly, Paul, Paul, what you were talking about with this book, The Plot to Kill Dr. Martin Luther King. So what is your take, man? Do you believe that James Earl Ray assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King?
Thanks, Earl. It's not a question of believing. It's a question of knowing, and that's the crux of the matter. We need to know the truth, and you can only know the truth by looking at the facts. I mean, and remember that James Earl Ray pleaded guilty. He was coerced into pleading guilty by his mob lawyer, Percy Foreman, who worked for the mob in Texas. And he got a guilty plea hearing. He didn't have a trial. The defense never presented evidence that the weapon, the throwdown weapon, did not match the death slug. The defense never presented the evidence that the gun was never sighted in. It was off 3.5 inches to one side and 4 inches down. This was from an FBI report on April 5th, 1968. The gun was never sighted in. There were 2 eyewitnesses who observed the white Mustang parked in front of Jim's Grill, and they noted it, and they were talking about it. And as they were walking down the block, lo and behold, the white Mustang drives by, 5:45. And that perfectly matched James Earl Ray's story that he went to go get a tire changed because his handler, Raul, might need to use the car, and he wanted to have that spare tire fixed so he could use it. These are some of the examples of the exculpatory information that wasn't brought forward in the House Select Committee on Assassinations hearings, wasn't brought forward in the DOJ investigation that culminated in the year 2000. And Dr. Pepper was a James Earl Ray's lawyer beginning in 1988. He was the King family lawyer in the 1999 civil lawsuit. He wrote 3 books on the subject, Orders to Kill, An Act of State, and the book that really got my attention recently was The Plot to Kill King, The Truth Behind the Assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., which he published in 2016. And I became aware of this book last spring, and I got it immediately. And when I read it, I said, I'm not letting another Martin Luther King day go by without calling attention to this, because the amount of evidence is just, it's a mountain. And young people are not being taught this. I dare anyone to bring a school book forward that tells the truth about how Martin Luther King was killed. And until we start telling the truth about people like this, nothing's ever going to change.
So we've got to go to the break, but when we come back, Dr. Austin, you know, I know you don't believe that James Earl Ray assassinated Dr. King. I want to ask you, why do you think Dr. King had to, at that point in time, why they assassinated him then? They had opportunities, many opportunities before. Why then? And who do you think was behind the assassination? I know, Paul, there's many books that agree with what it is you are saying, and yet many of them are being ignored. Why? We've got to go to break. Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. You're listening to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. We'll be back.
This river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know, change has gotta come, man. Ooh, yes it is. It's been too hard living, and I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there beyond the clouds.
You know, man, I don't think there's anybody better than Keith and Stu in that selection of music, man. I love them. They know exactly what to play when.
Stu drives me to do better.
Yeah, well, you aren't far behind, man.
Where do we vote?
I'll vote in. All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844. I mean, how did you interrupt Otis Redding? 844-9. What is it? 967-2789, 844-967-2789. Stream us at realresistanceradio.com. You know, we're talking about Dr. King from a different perspective. I could have came in here and we could have just talked about, you know, how Dr. King loved everybody and Dr. King was this and Dr. King was that. But you have to understand, you know, Dr. Austin, we were talking about, you know, Dr. King and what he meant and when they took his life. Do you think that they expected the response that they got?
I think so. And I think it was part of the plan.
Well, I mean, you know, even here in Milwaukee, there was a response. You know,
there was a response all over the
nation. All over the nation.
I almost lost my job. I just quit and went down to the funeral.
You know,
I was hoping I had my job when I got back.
You know, they didn't know. I guess they had to know. How could they not know the impact that Dr. King was having on people? And I think it's one of the reasons why they took his life, because more and more people were starting to see the evolution of Dr. King and supporting him in that evolution.
He had the market. People paid attention to him. He reached a certain level, you know, where everybody was listening to him, and he made people look at themselves from a consciousness point of view. You know, one nation under God, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all. He made the nation look at itself, and that was very difficult.
So I want to get back with you, Paul, about the assassination and the plot and what we were told. And, you know, there's so many things you can look at, especially of the day that he lost his life. And, people talk about Reverend Jesse Jackson and others, and how many other people they believe were involved in this, and the fact that all of this just seemed to be so perfectly set up that to think that one man, James Earl Ray, could come up with this idea himself, and why would James Earl Ray himself make a decision to do this? You say what?
You're hitting the nail on the head here, Earl. The assassination of Martin Luther King was an evolution of the state exerting its power to the hidden state, the deep state, to control matters. And they worked on the script that they used with John Kennedy, and they stripped the security of Martin Luther King that day. They pulled the invaders out of the Lorraine Motel. They pulled the black security group that had been King's security team every time he came to Memphis. They pulled them off. They set up the patsy, James Earl Ray, through a long process. We could go into that. They suppressed information, as I mentioned, during the guilty plea hearing. The prosecution suppressed evidence from the defense, and there was never a defense. Percy Foreman said he was sick, and he basically threw in the towel. There was no trial. The state controlled the investigation. The House Select Committee on Assassinations investigation was compromised. The DOJ report that came out in 2000 was compromised. They ignored, they intimidated witnesses. They destroyed evidence. The day after the assassination, they cut down all the brush from behind Jim's grill, from where the shot came. And the state, they ignored 3 or 4 eyewitnesses who saw a puff of smoke or from the gun, from the bushes. These people were not either, they weren't interviewed, or their testimony was ignored. They fabricated evidence with the throwdown weapon, with the bundle of James's possessions that was thrown down into Kniep's art store, which was right next door. And finally, they secured the media cooperation in memorializing the false narrative. I mean, they owned, what they called it the Mighty Wurlitzer. And Mr. Wisner from the CIA, they had placed their media operatives everywhere. They controlled the New York Times, everything. And in fact, after the 1999 trial, where it took the jury less than an hour to find James Earl Ray was not the shooter, that Lloyd Jowers, the owner of Jim's Grill, and unnamed government parties were involved. The government was involved. It took the jury less than an hour, and the judge said that Jowers was 30% responsible and that the state was 70% responsible. So you have, and the results of the trial got basically no media attention. And although people forget the King family, Dexter King, and they had accompanied Dr. Pepper in interviewing James Earl Ray and interviewing Lloyd Jowers. Andrew Young interviewed Lloyd Jowers. I mean, the press to this day, I challenge anyone to watch the media coverage this year and previous years and point out one story that speaks the truth about how the state killed this powerful man. He had his hands on the reins of power. And as Dr. Austin pointed out, that was not acceptable.
Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789. You too can join in the conversation if you choose. But I just, don't want to go another year with celebrating Dr. King's day as if somehow, because we celebrate his day, we don't have to know the truth about what happened. And it's one of the reasons.
You don't want to know.
You mean the nation doesn't want to know?
Doesn't want to know.
We've got to go to break, Doc. I'm going to let you respond on the other side. You listen to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. Join in the conversation, 844-967-2789. We'll be back.
You know it, and I know it. You know that, and I know.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789, and stream us at realresistanceradio.com. In the studio, Mr. Paul Mozina and Dr. Cecil Austin, and we're talking about the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Guys, I, out of all the influences I've had in my life to this point, Dr. King was the most influential of all. And I don't know if it was so much because I was able to see him. Television was coming into prominence, and the strength of his oratory, his intellect. But at the same time, he showed himself to be fragile. He showed himself to be a person who did not consider his life and what would happen to him. It was the fact that he was always concerned about somebody else. I remember reading about Dr. King as he and his brother A.D. were on the Jericho Road, the one that's in the book in the Bible. He actually went to walk the Jericho Road. And he said, I never will forget it, he said that while he was walking, he and his brother, he said he understood why Christ was so afraid and the folk were so afraid of the Jericho Road, because it was winding and dark. And he said they were going down the Jericho Road, Dr. King speaking, and his brother A.D., and they heard this man cry out in the darkness. And Dr. King said he began to go in the darkness to help the man who was crying out. And his brother A.D. said, no, Doc, you can't go in there. You can't go in there, Doc, because if you go in there, what's going to happen? We don't know what's going to happen to you. And Dr. King's response was, CAD, you have it wrong. It's not a matter of if I go in, what's going to happen to me. He said, the issue is if I don't go in, what's going to happen to the man who's in there crying out? Stuck with me my entire life. Something so sounds simple, but it had such a powerful impact on my life. It's one of the main reasons that I serve, is because Dr. King had that kind of impact on me, more so than any other human being that I've ever in my life. And so that's why when we talk about Dr. King, it is so emotional with me. When we talk about, and people talk about Dr. King's Day and all of those kind of things, and I think, oh, how they're missing the point. Oh, they're missing the point. If we attempted to honor him, if we wanted to live according to his principles, it could be such a wonderful world. But as long as it's so easy, it's easy to trot him out now. It's easy for a couple of days to talk about Dr. King. That means nothing. Really, really doesn't. And I get frustrated every year that this happens. And I talk about it every year. And people may be angry with us right now, with me right now, because they're all waiting on Monday. They're going to have their breakfasts all over the nation. We'll have a Dr. King breakfast and we'll sing Kumbaya. We'll even do it here in the city of Milwaukee, guys, where it's still the worst place in the nation. One of the worst places in the nation for people of color to live. One of the worst places in the nation for black male incarceration, unemployment, you name it. Poisoning of the lead in the water, schools, all the things that Dr. King was talking about way back then, we're experiencing now in our city. And yet on Monday, all the big shots, the movers and the shakers will be at the Wisconsin Center having breakfast, honoring Dr. King's memory. I just don't, you know.
Yeah, and I understand perfectly, what you're saying. But what I see as value to this celebration is you can't celebrate it without looking at it. And if you look at it, you got to come away with something that tells you something's wrong here. There is something wrong. It hasn't gone away. Okay? It's not over. We got to look at our history from a different perspective, maybe. And I think that comes out of it. That people who probably never would have thought that way have to think that way because of who we're celebrating. So I think there's some value, if that makes any
Well,
in a sense.
then I would say year after year after year, they do the exact same thing. And things have not improved or gotten any better.
I don't think it's happening strong enough so that we actually see it, but I believe that it's happening, that it's making people stop and think. Okay, it's making people take a realistic look at our history, which isn't what we're celebrating.
So you believe in 2019, the many of those in leadership in this country and other places are really attempting to live out the creed of Dr. King and the things that he did and what he represented?
No, I don't think there's a movement in that direction, but I don't think you can pay attention to Dr. King and celebrate him without having some inclination, some idea of what he was talking about.
Well, I don't know how a human being could not understand the suffering of another human being. I just have
You're
never
gonna start me talking about the species again.
Well, but if that's
human being, you're talking about the species.
But if that's what it is, Doc, then that's what it is. You know, Dr. King talked about what America did to the Vietnamese children, napalm, killing innocent babies,
War.
and not having any compassion
When you dropped
whatsoever.
When you dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, you weren't dropping that bomb on an army.
Right.
You weren't dropping that bomb on soldiers. You were killing senior citizens, men, women, children. In about 1 minute, you killed about over 200,000 people.
Because there was a lack of morality on who those people were.
And that's what we're talking about, the morality side of it. Okay, we justify that by saying we actually saved lives of our people. But you know, what kind of mentality do you have when you can drive a ship up to a land that you've never been to before? You see people, and yet you pull out your flag and you stick it in the ground and you say, I claim this for Spain. Okay, I mean, that's the mentality that we're dealing with. That's not easy to understand or adjust.
So who do we have on the line, Keith?
Jerry from the East Side.
Hey, good morning, Jerry. How you doing, my friend?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine. You have a question or comment?
Well, my comment is this: I feel as you do in terms of the celebration of the King's birthday. However, or King's Day, but I have an issue in terms of you guys saying that you celebrate, but you cannot help but learn something when you celebrate. And I disagree with that because, generally speaking, what happens, in my opinion, is that people celebrate by saying, by reciting or listening to the I Have a Dream speech, A. B, they have no idea what the many, many issues that Dr. King discussed and wrote about. And so I don't think people, white or black, really learn much from King. It's become a day off, A. And B, beyond the King, I Have a Dream speech, what did they learn? They being most Americans.
Anybody want to respond to that?
I fail to understand how anybody can listen to that speech or read that speech and not come away with something valuable.
Go ahead.
Well, there's more than just that speech, though. It's my issue. There's more than people use that speech as an excuse for celebrating his holiday. But he said much more than that. He said much more than that, which was just as important, And yet, you learn. I mean, you listen to it, but most people now listen to it like pledge allegiance to the United States. When they say that, recite that, most people have no idea what they're talking about. They say it.
What do you mean? It's English. What do you mean they don't have an idea what they're talking about? It's English.
Well, it is English. What I'm saying is, if they're reciting something like the Pledge of Allegiance or without
With liberty and justice for all. It's English.
You know, Jerry, I get your point. It flows off the tongue. It is such a powerful speech that we all can just recite it. But you know, it was much more than that. Jerry, thank you very much for the call. We get it. Paul, you say what?
Well, I wanted to point out something that King was doing in 1967 with the help of Dr. Pepper, and they created. People might not remember this, but they created the National Conference for New Politics. They were going to bring a third party with Dr. King and Dr. Benjamin Spock as a vice president, and their convention was undermined. They were subverted, and they were derailed. And we're getting back though to the point of what his reach was beyond the party. And I'll have to say this, Earl, and bear with me, brother, but even on this radio station, Resistance Radio, there's a clear Republican versus Democrat thing, and the problem is in the system. And I've heard Brother Royal on the show saying, talking about the system. We have to change the system. We can't just align ourselves in a partisan way with Democrats and Republicans. We need to speak the truth. I mean, the Democrats were in power when King was killed, and they helped cover it up. I mean, the fish rots from the head, as Reagan would say. And all through the years, the Democrats and Republicans have been passing the baton to keep the war in Afghanistan going, the war in Iraq, the war in Syria, the war in Lebanon. Libya, Yemen. There's a continuity of injustice, and as Dr. King said, the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. If we take one thing away from his legacy, let's change that. Let's step up and do what we can to get out of the partisan politics and speak the truth to power and stop the being the biggest purveyor of violence in the world. Let's stop that.
You can't help but look at a nation with a John Desai that has a budget for war larger than almost all the rest of the nations on earth, and at the same time you want to cut food stamps to the poorest people in this country. I don't care, like you said, whether you're Democrat or Republican. When you don't think people should have more value than all these other things, we wind up with the kind of situations we have right now. We've got to go to break. The phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. Paul Mazzina is in the studio along with Dr. Cecil Austin. You two can join in the conversation at 844-967-2789. We'll be back. All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Stream us at realresistanceradio.com. Joined in the studio by Dr. Cecil Austin and Paul Mazzina. And we're talking about, Dr. King from a different perspective. I don't want to come in and talk about Dr. King loved everybody. Dr. King said, judge people by the color, content of their character, not the color of their skin. I don't want to talk about Dr. King like that. Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. I want to talk about the Dr. King that realized that things just weren't changing with the way he was approaching things. So, Paul, do you think, and I asked off the break, I'm going to ask you now on the air, do you think the truth of Dr. King's assassination will ever be told?
And as I mentioned, the truth has been told. And I implore the listeners to get the book. It's called The Plot to Kill King, The Truth Behind the Assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. by William Pepper, the King family attorney. And the problem comes in, and I've experienced this advocating for the truth about 9/11, advocating for the truth about Oklahoma City, the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Right. If there's case after case where the government lies to the people, and there's a certain threshold of cognitive dissonance that people have, and as soon as you start to bring information forward, that information actually becomes a brick in the wall that they make between you. And I want to see us make bridges to drive. I have a truckload of information to deliver to you. But if you're gonna put up a wall and not let me drive my truck over and share this information with you, then we aren't going to get anywhere. And people, when you cross their comfort zone and you start shaking up their core belief systems, their trust in government, their belief that the government would never lie to them, and because if you challenge that and they acknowledge it, what does that mean? That means they have to respond. Then now they have a moral obligation. Can I continue to ignore the truth? Or should I act? Well, it's easier to ignore the truth. Then I'm not under any obligation to do anything. So that when you ask if the truth will ever be known about how Dr. King was killed, I say the truth is out there, but people don't want to accept it because it's a call to action. If you have a heart, if you have a spirit, we talked about spirit right. Beginning with your brother. The spirit of Martin Luther King is in my heart, and I don't know what else to say. I'm a cancer survivor. I don't know how much longer I have to live. That's why I retired from my job. And that's why I'm not wasting a minute. I'm spending all my time to try to share this information, whether it's the truth about King, 9/11, Oklahoma City, the lies that the government perpetuates. Go ahead.
So here's what I don't get, Paul and Doc. I don't understand why the American people don't want to know the truth. All the things you talked about, Paul, from Oklahoma City to 9/11 and to right now with Donald Trump and all these, why would you not want to know the truth? What is it about a human being? Doc, this is where you come in. What is it about a person and so we can run around and poke our chests out and tell people how great America is. We're the great Americans and we can go and stick our nose into other people's business all over the earth. Then we can go and dominate those nations, and we can go and put the puppets in charge that we want in charge. And then we say we're Judeo-Christian nation and just lie after lie after lie, send young people off to die for multinational corporations. And the American people sit there twiddling their thumbs. And those who know are afraid, unfortunately, to speak, far too many. And those who have the power to speak, they won't speak. What are we afraid of? Well, I mean, why don't we want to tell the truth about what's happening in this nation?
As long as there's greed, you'll be afraid of each other. Afraid of each other.
Okay, we got to go to break. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on the other side. Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. We'll be back.
He's Dosted.
So you still want to get your vote in now? Oh man, you gotta let this play a little bit. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show, Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Donny Hathaway. Wow, man. I forgot what I was talking about. Okay.
You definitely are aging yourself. Sure.
Oh, you mean, man, that's Keith.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, man, I did not remember Donny Hathaway. Man, Keith wasn't even around, man. He's a young guy. I know. But he's well learned.
I got the records at home.
Yeah.
I'm good.
So
background. He had some.
Yeah.
He wasn't born. I appreciate it.
Let's hear a couple of minutes of this first, man, before we turn that up.
I'll vote for that.
That must have came out in about 1966. Really? 64? Somewhere around there. Keith, where'd that come out?
I got to look at the date here.
Okay.
That is right around that time. I want to say 64 as well.
Yeah, okay. But man, wow, you can play that today and that'll be a hit. But anyway, we had a wonderful conversation up there, as we always do, with Paul Mazzina and Dr. Austin about the human being. And, Doc, you can clearly define, what happens and what is going on with the human being. And that's why I love you so much, man. You always can break it down and go back to the origin of why we do the things we do. And we're talking about right and wrong. Are you predisposed? You come into the world knowing what's right and what's wrong. And you said what to that?
Oh, I wish Minister William was still with us.
I'm sure he probably is, but go ahead.
We have to thank God as human beings for our species. We are probably the least pre-programmed living thing on the planet. Everything else is pre-programmed. It's born and it seems to know what it's for, where it's supposed to go, and doesn't have to learn everything. The human baby has to learn everything, and that's a blessing. Okay? And that's why we spend so much time. Okay? We have to spend so much time with our children. I don't know another species where it takes 18 years to raise one. We got to raise some guys for 18 years before we let them go, okay, out on our own.
And they still don't know much.
Yeah. If they don't grow up in a strong culture. I'm so blessed by the village that I grew up in on 4th and Galena here in Milwaukee, where I had about 5 mothers and everybody was working and the mothers were taking care of each other. And here, take this cup up to Miss Johnson and tell her I need some sugar.
I remember all of those things.
And I couldn't be disrespectful to any adult. If the wino in the alley told my daddy I was disrespectful to him, I was in big trouble. Yeah. The teacher at school told me she was going to call my house. I'd be on my knees going, oh, no, please, you don't have to call. We can work this out.
Right.
Okay? And that's the human being, and that's our blessing.
But there's another side of that, too,
that's
right?
Our blessing. Well, we are products. That's why our environment is so important, because we are products. We're not born pre-programmed. That's why we're so special, and that's why we thank God, for who we are.
But at the same time, you can look at life through that prism of loving the human being for who the human being is, and saying we're all the same, or the potential. Yeah, the potential to be a human being.
The potential of human beings. We don't have a good history. Okay? Human beings on the planet don't have a good history, man. We have been killing each other and wiping out the planet and boom, boom, boom. It's all about greed, where the mighty dollar becomes more important than the person.
So all of that is also learned behavior.
Yeah.
So here's a prime example, capitalism. We do the things we do because of capitalism as a nation, right?
I'm glad you said as a nation. Because in Africa, there's a saying that you can tell the wealth of a rich man by looking in the bellies of his neighbors. Okay? Nobody's poor if somebody's rich. It just doesn't happen. But in Europe, that was the way it was. That was the way of life. Some people were rich and some people were just poor.
It is now the way of life in America. It has been No?
I don't think so.
That it's the way of life in America?
You don't think you don't think there's people in America with billions of dollars?
No.
There are people who are starving?
No. I meant, and let me clarify what I meant. I meant that part of selfishness in America, and I've got to look out for number one, right? He who has the most toys in the end wins.
Now that's different. Looking out for yourself is different from the person with the most toys.
Explain
You
that.
can look out for yourself and care about everybody else. You can be looking out for yourself and willing to share with the person who doesn't have. Okay? That's different from greed. You know, we're talking about building a wall, okay, to separate us from our neighbors who are so poor. How can a Christian country with the most money in the world have poor neighbors? That's what I'm talking about. Mexico shouldn't be poor. Mexico would have been a state if it wasn't for the racism. Wasn't for racism and slavery, Mexico would have been a state. We conquered them.
You know, Doc, you really make me think when I have you on, and I love you so much for it because, you know, there are people saying on one side of this, we don't want them coming here because they're going to use up our resources, and they're going to want to use our healthcare system.
Does that sound Christian to you? Is that something Jesus would say?
Well, no, it doesn't.
No.
You know, we only have X amount of dollars, and we don't want them. They're going to take some from me, as opposed to saying, you know, I was hungry and you fed me now.
If we'd helped Mexico, we wouldn't be concerned about them trying to come here. We wouldn't be trying to build a wall. Our neighbors are the poorest people on the planet. You know? Now, how can we be a Christian country with neighbors that are that poor? It's not supposed to happen.
Well, but people don't want to think about that. You know, that's too hard. It makes me look at myself.
Guilty. Yeah, I hear you. That's why I wish the minister was still. Minister William is good at this. I wish he was still with us.
Just jump in, Paul.
I just wanted to mention that when we talk about our country is being run by the rich and elite. There's a deep state, and these are the founding fathers were a rich collection of white men. And the Constitution wasn't voted on by everybody. Nobody was at the table except the judges, the big property owners, the big merchants, and their hold on power they've never let go of their grip. And if you look at the history of the Supreme Court, you'll see that the courts have given one resource, one franchise, one privilege after another to the white businessmen. Let's be honest about this. Through the course of history. And the financial elites are controlling this country. So when we talk about our country not being fair, not being a Christian country, it's because we don't have a real democracy. And Dr. Pepper talks about that in the book, The Plot to Kill King. He talks about after they killed John Kennedy and Martin Luther and Malcolm and Robert Kennedy, we stopped being a real democracy. The elite they've been there at the table since the Constitution was formed.
Good way to tie it in.
Go ahead, sir.
No. You know what, Paul? It's exactly, it is, but we've got to go to break. So hold that thought. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. I'm so honored to have Dr. Austin and Paul Mazzina in the studio as we talk about Dr. King and, you know, and from a different perspective. And that's what I always want to do is talk about him from a different perspective. Yeah, he had a dream. Early on in his life. And he also did say that dream became a nightmare. That's the Dr. King I like talking about. We've got to go to the break and listen to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. We'll be back.
It's radio.
The Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789. Stream us at realresistanceradio.com. You know, in the studio, Paul Mazzina and Dr. Austin. But I'll tell you guys, and then we'll go back to that. I haven't dusted off my Dr. King memorabilia for this week because I don't have any. And so I won't be putting it back in my closet because it resides in my spirit, in my heart.
So he is a hero for you.
Absolutely. And he lives in me.
So say, don't make me come over.
So he lives in me. So So 365 days a year, I'm celebrating Dr. King with what I do on a daily basis. So, Paul, before we went to break, man, you had some earth-shattering information that you were sharing. Go ahead.
Well, I was just alluding to the myth that people in this country are living under, thinking that they have a representative government. Now, remember, the word democracy doesn't appear in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. This is supposed to be a republic where people's rights are respected.
Right.
And we're living in a country right now with the war on drugs. The fundamental right of a person to inoffensively possess and consume a substance has been taken away by the government. And it's led to mass incarceration. And if King was alive today, he would be saying this drug war has got to go.
No, without question.
And one more thing about that, the powers that be. I mean, let's not forget, Dr. King was going to bring the Poor People's March to Washington, D.C. 500,000 people were to camp out in front of Lincoln Memorial. And the government was spread thin. They had no resources. Everything was over in Vietnam. They were afraid. And I mentioned this before. Dr. King had his hands on the reins of power. And that power was the truth and a population that heard it and was not going to back down from asserting their rights in this country. And that was another big reason he had to go. And I don't mean it sounds terrible to say he had to go.
No,
that's why the powers that be took him down, because he was. Go ahead, sir.
No, look, Dr. King again was bigger than life, and and unfortunately, the fact that you have to be bigger in death than you are in life is really what's wrong with this nation. How did he become more popular after his death than during his life? Well, it's easy to honor Dr. King after he's gone. He was a threat while he was living. He's no longer a threat after he's gone. And it got people all confused. And so people think all over the nation, you remember the fight, Doc, that went on to try to get Dr. King's holiday? Look, and all across the nation, there are streets and alleys named after Dr. King. Would you have believed?
Not every state celebrates it, right?
Yes, not every state celebrates.
Some states that don't celebrate it.
Right. And in many areas across this nation, they've got Dr. King boulevards and all those things. That Dr. King would have cared nothing of you naming streets and alleys after him. He would have given that no thought whatsoever. It would have had no impact on his life. Who do we have on the life key?
Brother Muhammad calling back.
Hey, Brother Minister William, all right. Thank you. Come on back. Dr. Austin's been calling and clamoring for you, brother. You say what?
I'm calling back because Dr. Austin kept calling for me. But yes, sir. I think that Dr. King represented, he was a true patriot. He was a greater patriot than really even our founding fathers, because the nation was founded on slavery and the murdering of the Native American people. But he was a true patriot from the standpoint that he loved this country. And what he desired was for a change. He desired for the country to be saved from its own wrongdoing. And so if we really are going to continue the legacy of Dr. King, it's not I have a dream. It is looking at the realities of the country and taking a position at modern times that we know that Dr. King would have taken. And so, Dr. King is a child of slavery. So the role of Black people here, we are the only people here that have come, we didn't come on the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. We came in the hold of ships. And that gives us a very unique, painful experience, but it qualifies us through our pain and this purifying process to be the soul and the caller of America and its leadership to justice. We're not here. We're not here. We didn't experience this so that we could go along to get along. And Dr. King was an example. He was one of the best that we have.
So
and in truth, And in truth, Brother Earl, the person who really has taken the position that Dr. King took in the 60s is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
So Minister Williams, let me say this.
Yes, sir.
Because we're running out of time. I want to get one person on. What time tomorrow and what's the address?
10 o'clock tomorrow at Muhammad Mosque number 3, 4202 North Tetonia Avenue. And we're going to talk about the evolution of Dr. King.
All right. Thank you, Minister Williams. Who do we have on next? Let's get them in quickly, Keith.
Alice from Milwaukee.
Alice from Milwaukee. Good morning. How are you? Good afternoon. How are you? Thank you very much for the call. You say what?
I wanted to say, first of all, that I am perpetually grateful for the service that you give our community.
Yeah.
And secondly, I wanted to say that you ask, what is it about people where they don't want to do anything to help the community? And on many cases, I think it's just that we don't know what to do. So I'm asking, what if you and the two gentlemen there and the Dr. Williams that you just spoke to, what if we created workshops to teach people how the government truly works? And if we taught the community in another workshop about the history of America, and in a third one about the history of Dr. King.
You know what? Why don't you leave your phone number with Keith? And that's something that certainly all of us can come together and do. And it is.
Is it happening in school?
No, not the truth. And it is more than honorable that you would call and ask for that to happen. There are more than a handful of people who would be willing to do that. And that's something we can all work together to make happen. Thank you very much for the call. I really appreciate it. Leave your name and number and I'll get to you. And Paul, let's talk about the books quickly that people can get to find out the truth about the assassination of Dr. King.
Yeah, he sounds pretty impressed with them, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. The first book that he wrote was Orders to Kill. I'm
Dr.
talking
Pepper.
about Dr. William Pepper, and I think he came out in 1997. And the second book was after the civil trial and after the DOJ analysis, President Clinton and Janet Reno, in response to the trial, they started a DOJ investigation, and Dr. Pepper's response to the findings of that and the trial was a book called An Act of State, which the execution of Martin Luther King, which he published in 2004. And the book that really got my attention last spring was The Plot to Kill King: The Truth Behind the Assassination of Martin Luther King.
All right, we got to go.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, Doc. Thank all of you who are listening. Up next, the Joe Costa Show. You've been listening to the Earl Ingram Show on Real Resistance Radio. Enjoy Dr. King's Day.
Do you own a rental property, or would you like to partner with a rental investment team? Call the pros you can trust at CCL Management. Rental expertise second to none, a general contractor on staff to direct repairs and improvements, and real estate brokerage services